OBS. Now let's make sure we're streaming in all the appropriate places before we dive into the actual stream. First, we're going to check our good friends over at Restream. If you don't know, I broadcast from OBS to Restream, and then Restream pushes my signal out to both YouTube and Twitch. And I am live on Restream. Let's go check over on YouTube to make sure we're live. Restream says we're live, but it's always good to verify that everything's going well. We are. Let's get into the little, whatchamacallit, the control room. And it looks like we are live on Twitch as well. Always good to see that. Thoroughly. Aloha. Oh, we have to go post our Go Live notifications before I do anything else. First, we're going to be posting it on Twitter. Yeah. So yeah, I don't keep a starting soon screen because I think as a small streamer, it's important for me to be live when I say I'm live. And I'm over the character limit by 24 because of the link. It says we're live on Twitch and YouTube for a very special stream. We're reading 5 holiday books for this season. 5 holiday books. I can get rid of 4 this season. That should get me down. How far does that do? 7, 6. Here's some books or some books. Aloha, Wonder Gamer. How are you doing? Okay, that's good. I can get it in under 1, so we can tweet that. Now I'll make sure I copy and paste what I wrote because I'm doing good. I'm just sending out my Go Live notifications right now. First on Twitter and then on LinkedIn. Yeah, I'm having a good time. Today's going to be a fun stream because we're going to be reading holiday books. There we go. We can post and we're live there as well. I'm very excited about today's stream. So, if those who are wondering what is the phrase of the day, the phrase of the word day is technical difficulties. I love that movie. It's such a good time. All right, so what are we doing? We're going to be reading 5 holiday books today. The 5 holiday books are, we're going to start off with The Polar Express. Then we're going to read, and that book is, of course, about Christmas. Then we're going to be reading a book called The 7 Spools of Thread. That is a Kwanzaa story. I went around and I looked for a bunch of Kwanzaa stories, tried to find out what was one of the better ones. In terms of being recommended by people, and this was one of the more highly recommended ones. I'll be honest, I've never read a Hanukkah story before. I mean, a Kwanzaa story, so I was very excited to pick this up. I read it through a couple times, and I've enjoyed it. After that, we'll be reading a book which I guarantee you, most likely none of you have ever heard of. It is called Santa and Alex. This is a book from my childhood. It means a lot to me. You can't get this on Kindle, so I had to actually scan the pages in to get this. So just so you guys appreciate the work I've put into it. After that, we'll be reading Hershel and the Hanukkah Goblins before we wrap things up with How the Grinch Stole Christmas. Between each one of the stories, I will, be talking to you guys. But when I'm in the story, I apologize that I'm mostly reading the stories out of myself. Mahalo for saying hello while you're at work. I think it's going to be a fun stream, even if no one else shows up, if it's just me and you. For the time that I have you, it's going to be a great stream. So let's get into it. Let's start off with our first book, The Polar Express. The Polar Express, written and illustrated by Chris van Allsburg. Polar Express. It's to someone named Karen. Makes a lot of sense. On Christmas Eve many years ago, I lay quietly in my bed. I did not rustle the sheets. I breathed slowly and silently. I was listening for a sound a friend had told me I'd never hear, the ringing bells of Santa's sleigh. "There's no Santa," my friend had insisted, but I knew he was wrong. Late that night I did hear sounds, though not of ringing bells. From outside they came the sounds of hissing steam and squeaking metal. I looked through my window and saw a train standing perfectly still in front of my house. It was wrapped in an apron of steam. Snowflakes fell lightly around it. A conductor stood at the open door of one of the cars. He took a large pocket watch from his vest and then looked out my window. I put on slippers and a robe. I tiptoed downstairs and out the door. "All aboard," the conductor cried out. I ran up to him. "Well," he said, "are you coming?" "Where?" I asked. "Why, to the North Pole, of course," was his answer. "This is the Polar Express." I took his outstretched hand and he pulled me aboard. The train was filled with other children, all in their pajamas and nightgowns. We sang Christmas carols and ate candies with nougat centers as white as snow. We drank hot cocoa as thick and rich as melted chocolate bars. Outside, the lights of towns and villages flickered in the distance as the Polar Express raced northward. Soon there was no more lights to be seen. We traveled through cold, dark forests, where lean wolves roamed and white-tailed rabbits hid from our train as it thundered through the quiet wilderness. We climbed mountains so high it seemed as if we would scrape the moon. But the Polar Express never slowed down. Faster and faster we ran along, rolling over peaks and through valleys like a car on a roller coaster. The mountains turned to hills, the hills to snow-covered plains. We crossed a barren desert of ice, the great polar ice cap. Lights appeared in the distance. They looked like the lights of a strange ocean liner sailing from the frozen sea. "There," said the conductor, "is the North Pole." The North Pole. It was a huge city standing alone at the top of the world, filled with factories where every Christmas toy was made. At first we saw no elves. "They're gathering at the center of the city," the conductor told us. "That is where Santa will give the first gift of Christmas." "Who will receive the first gift?" we all asked. The conductor answered, "He will choose one of you." "Look," shouted one of the children, "the elves!" Outside we saw hundreds of elves. As our train grew closer to the center of the North Pole, we slowed to a crawl. So crowded were the streets with Santa's helpers. When the Polar Express could no further, we stopped and the conductor led us outside. We pressed through the crowd to the edge of a large open circle. In front of us stood Santa's sleigh. The reindeer were excited. They pranced and paced, ringing the silver sleigh bells that hung from their harnesses. It was a magical sound, like nothing I'd ever heard. Across the circle, the elves moved apart, and Santa Claus appeared. The elves cheered wildly. He marched over to us, and pointing at me, he said, "Let's have this fellow here." He jumped into his sleigh. The conductor handed me up. I sat on Santa's knee, and he asked, "Now, what would you like for Christmas?" I knew that I could have any gift that I could imagine. But the thing I wanted most for Christmas was not inside Santa's giant bag. What I wanted more than anything was one silver bell from Santa's sleigh. When I asked, Santa smiled, and he gave me a hug and told an elf to cut a bell from the reindeer's harness. The elf tossed it up to Santa. He stood, holding the bell high above him, and called out, "The first gift of Christmas." A clock struck midnight as the elves roared their approval. Santa handed the bell to me, and I put it in my bathrobe pocket. The conductor helped me down from the sleigh. Santa shouted out the reindeers' names and cracked his whip. His team charged forward and climbed into the air. Santa circled above us, then disappeared into the cold, dark polar sky. As soon as we were back inside the Polar Express, the other children asked to see my bell. I reached into my pocket, but the one thing I felt was a hole. I had lost the silver bell from Santa Claus's sleigh. "Let's hurry outside and look for it," one of the children said. But the train gave a sudden lurch and started moving. We were on our way home. It broke my heart to lose the bell. When the train reached my house, I sadly left the other children. I stood at my doorway and waved goodbye. The conductor said something to me from the moving train, but I couldn't hear him. "What?" I yelled out. He cupped his hands around his mouth and yelled, "Merry Christmas," he shouted. The Polar Express let out a loud blast from its whistle and sped away. On Christmas morning, my little sister Sarah and I opened our presents. When it looked as if everything had been unwrapped, Sarah found one more, last small box, behind the tree. It had my name on it. Inside was a silver bell. There was a note. "Found this on the seat next of my sleigh. Fix that hole in your pocket. Signed, Mr. C." I shook the bell. It made the most beautiful sound my sister had ever heard. But my mother said, "Oh, that's too bad." My father said, "Yes, it's broken." When I had shaken the bell, my parents had not heard a sound. At one time, most of my friends could hear the bell, but as the years passed, it fell silent for all of them. Even Sarah found one Christmas she could no longer hear its sweet sound. Though I've grown old, the bell still rings for me, as it does for all who truly believe. The end. All right. One, I hope everyone enjoyed that one. I didn't. I'm going to be honest. That book sucks. I never read this book. I picked it up for the stream because, again, I was trying to think to myself, what would be like kind of a good book to read? And I'm looking through what's available. And, this one, this is a popular book. It's an older book. It's from 1985, so that means this book would be 37 years old now. It's been made into a movie, and they have Polar Express train rides from all over the area. Any geographical area that's got a touristy train thing will have a Polar Express. And so I'm kind of disappointed that somehow someone decided this book is it. This is the book that we're going to hype up and talk about. I think the thing that bothers me the most with this book is there's just not much of a story there. There's not much humor. There's not much anything going on. It feels like it relies so heavily on the wonder of Christmas. And call me a cynical. I'm literally sitting here on Twitch reading holiday books. But this is a book that just relies on the wonder of Christmas. And there just isn't much to it. And I think the thing that I dislike the most about this is let's per se, for a second, this is a universe where Santa Claus is real. And gifts are magically just showing up in people's houses. Right? Like, did this kid's parents seriously somehow not believe that Santa exists, but the gifts magically appear in their house? I didn't put myself there. Right, like, let's be honest. This is a world in which gifts magically appear beneath a tree, and the parents are like, "Nah, Santa's not a real thing. It's fake." Sarah stopped, because that's the whole concept of that he can hear the bell because he believes in Santa. But these other people, they don't believe in Santa, so they can't hear the bell. Right? That's one of my first little beefs about it, is at the end of the day, there's just not much of a story there. Like, what's the point of bringing a train of kids to the North Pole to give one of them a present and then put the rest of them back on the train? Like, answer me that. What's the point? And I think those are kind of my beefs with it. I've never seen the movie, so I do not know how the movie handles all these things, but I don't know why someone read this book and was like, we should make a movie. We should make this as a thing. This is a 37-year-old book, which does nothing in my mind. But I hope you enjoy me reading it. All right, our second book. I actually kind of like this book a little more because I think one of the things that's more interesting for people is, like, oftentimes when you're doing something, you get to learn about things that you may not have thought about. Excuse me. Or may not have any reference around. And I think that's what I like about this book was, although Kwanzaa is something that's always kind of been on a peripheral thing for me, I feel like this book taught me and gave me information about something that I may not have a ton of experience with, and thus will allow me to understand things more. So I hope you're ready to hear the 7 Spools of Thread, a Kwanzaa story. By Angela Shelf Medearis, illustrated by Daniel Minter. I'm just going to apologize right off the bat that I butcher words in this book. I'm going to do my best. I hope you give me the grace. Sticks in a bundle are unbreakable, an African proverb. 7 Spools of Thread was written especially for Kwanzaa. Kwanzaa is a cultural holiday begun in America and celebrated by people of African descent all over the world. In 1966, Dr. Maulana Karunga, a college professor, created Kwanzaa, which means first fruits in Swahili. He based the holiday on ancient African harvest celebrations and customs. Dr. Karunga felt that African Americans in his community needed a special time to help them take pride in their glorious past and plan for the future. Kwanzaa is celebrated from December 26th until January 1st. It is not a religious holiday that honors a heroic person. Instead, it is a time where people of African descent join together to honor the heritage and traditions of their ancestors. During the Kwanzaa celebration, everyone pledges to work together to improve themselves and make their community a better place to live. Kwanzaa is a celebration of the past, the present, and the future of the people of African descent. Dr. Karenga established special symbols for Kwanzaa, including fruits and vegetables, which stand for the harvest. During the days of Kwanzaa, 7 candles, 1 black, 3 red, and 3 green are highlighted. They stand for the Ngoza Saba, or the 7 principles. The Ngoza Saba are to be memorized, discussed, and acted upon during the 7 days of Kwanzaa and throughout the year. These are the Ngoza Saba. Umoja, which means unity, to strive for and maintain unity in the family, community, nation, and race. Kozichagulia, self-determination, to define ourselves and name ourselves, create for ourselves and speak for ourselves instead of being defined, named, created for, and spoken by others. Ujima, which means collective work and responsibility, to build and maintain our community together and make our sisters and brothers' problems our problems and to solve them together. Ojamaa, cooperative economics, to build and maintain our own stores, shops, and other businesses and profit from them together. Nia, which means purpose, to make our collective vocation the building and developing of our community in order to restore our people to their traditional greatness. Kuumba, creativity, to do always as much as we can, in the way we can, in order to leave our community more beautiful and beneficial than we inherited it. Imani, faith. To believe with all our heart in our people, our parents, our leaders, and the righteousness and victory of our struggle. All of these are the principles of the Nguza Samba, are hidden in this story, 7 spools of thread. Can you find them? In a small African village in the country of Ghana, there lived an old man and his 7 sons. After the death of his wife, the old man became a father and mother to the boys. The 7 brothers were handsome young men. Their skin was as smooth and dark as the finest mahogany wood. Their limbs were as straight and strong as warriors' spears. But they were a disappointment to their father. From morning until night, the brothers' small home was filled with the sound of the brothers quarreling. As soon as the sun brought forth a new day, the brothers began to argue. They argued all morning about how to tend to the crops. They argued all afternoon about the weather. "It is hot," said the middle son. "No, a cool breeze is blowing," said the second. They argued all evening about when to return home. "It will be dark soon," the youngest said. "Let's finish this row and begin anew tomorrow." "No, it's too early to stop," called the third son. "Can't you see the sun is setting?" shouted the sixth son. And so it would continue until the moon beamed down and the stars twinkled in the sky. At mealtime, the young men argued until the stew was cold and the fufu was hard. "You gave him more than me," whined the third son. "I divided the food equally," said their father. "I will starve with only the small portion on my plate," complained the youngest. "If you don't want it, I'll eat it," said the oldest son. He grabbed a handful of meat from his brother's plate. "Stop being so greedy," said the youngest. And so it went on every night. It was often morning before the 7 brothers finished dinner. One sad day, the old man died and was buried. At sunrise the next morning, the village chief called the brothers before him. "Your father has left an inheritance," said the chief. The brothers whispered excitedly among themselves. "I know my father left me everything, because I am the oldest son," said the oldest. "I know my father left me everything because I'm the youngest son," said the youngest. "He left everything to me," said the middle son. "I know I was his favorite." Said the second son. "Everything is mine." The brothers began shouting and shoving. Soon all 7 were rolling around on the ground, hitting and kicking each other. "Stop this instant," the chief shouted. The brothers stopped fighting. They shook the dust off their clothes and sat before the chief, each eyeing each other suspiciously. "Your father has decreed that all of his property and possessions will be divided among you equally," said the chief. "But first, by the time the moon rises tonight, you must learn how to make gold out of these spools of silk thread. If you do not, you will be turned out of your home as beggars." The oldest brother received blue thread, the next brother red, the next yellow. The middle son was given orange, the next green, the next black. The youngest received white thread. For once, the brothers were speechless. The chief spoke again. "From this moment forward, you must not argue among yourselves, or raise your hands in anger towards one another. If you do, your father's property and all his possessions will be divided equally among the poorest of the villagers. Go quickly, you only have a little time." The brothers bowed to the chief and hurried away. Yes.
Where's my iPad?
Close the door. Speaking of children. Didn't even close it all the way. When the 7 Ashanti brothers arrived at their farm, something unusual happened. They sat side by side, from the oldest to the youngest, without saying anything unkind to each other. "My brother," the oldest said after a while, Let us shake hands and make peace among ourselves. Let us never argue or fight again, said the youngest brother. Aloha, Ami. Welcome to the stream. We're currently in the middle of a book called 7 Spools of Thread. The brothers placed their hands together and held each other tightly. For the first time in years, peace rested within the halls of their home. My brothers, said the third son quietly, surely our father would not turn us to the world as beggars. I agree, said the middle son. I do not believe our father would have given us this task of turning thread into gold if it were impossible. Could it be, said the oldest son, there might be small pieces of gold in the thread? The sun beamed hotly overhead. Yellow streams of light crept inside the hut. Each brother held up his spool of thread. The beautiful colors sparkled in the sunlight, but there were no nuggets of gold in the spools. I'm afraid not, my brother, said the sixth son. That was a good idea. Thank you, my brother, said the oldest. Could it be, said the youngest, that by making something from this thread, we could earn a fortune in gold? Perhaps, said the oldest. We could make cloth out of this thread and sell it. I believe we can. That is a good plan, said the middle son, but we do not have enough of any one color to make a full bolt of cloth. What if, said the third son, we weave the thread together and make a cloth of many colors? But our people do not wear clothes like that, said the fifth son. We wear only cloth of one color. Maybe, said the second, we can make a cloth that is so special, everyone will want to wear it. My brothers, said the sixth son, if we could finish faster, if we all work together. I know we can succeed, said the middle son. The 7 Ashanti brothers went to work. Together they cut the wood to make a loom. The younger brothers held the pieces together while the other brothers assembled the loom. They took turns weaving cloth out of their spools of thread to make a pattern of stripes and shapes that looked like the wings of birds. They used all the colors, blue, red, yellow, orange, green, black, and white. Soon the brothers had several pieces of beautiful multicolored cloth. When the cloth was finished, the 7 brothers took turns neatly folding the brightly colored fabric. They then placed it into 7 baskets and put the baskets on their head. The brothers formed a line from oldest to youngest and began the journey to the village. The sun slowly made a golden path across the sky. The brothers hurried down the long, dusty road as quickly as they could. As soon as they entered the marketplace, the 7 Ashanti brothers called out, "Come and buy the most wonderful cloth in the world. Come and buy the most wonderful cloth in the world." They unfolded a bolt and held it up for all to see. The multicolored fabric glistened like a rainbow. A crowd gathered around the 7 Ashanti brothers. "Look," said one villager, "I have never seen cloth so beautiful. Look at the unusual pattern." "Ah," said another, "this is the finest fabric in all the land. Feel the texture." The brothers smiled proudly. Suddenly a man dressed in magnificent robes pushed his way to the front of the crowd. Everyone stepped back respectfully. It was the king's treasurer. He rubbed the cloth between the palms of his hands. Then he held it up to the sunlight. "What a thing of beauty," he said, fingering the material. "This cloth will make a wonderful gift for the king. I must have all of it." The 7 brothers whispered together. "Cloth fit for a king," said the oldest. Should be purchased at only a price that only a king can pay. It's yours for 1 bag of gold." "Sold," said the king's treasurer. He untied his bag of gold and spilled out many pieces for his brothers. The 7 Ashanti brothers ran out of the marketplace and back down the road to their village. A shining silver moon began to creep up in the sky. Panting and dripping with sweat, the brothers threw themselves before the chief's hut. "Oh, chief," said the oldest, "we have turned the thread into gold." The chief came out of his hut and sat upon a stool. The oldest brother poured the gold out onto the ground. "Have you argued and fought today?" asked the chief. "No, my chief," said the youngest. "We've been too busy working together to argue or fight." "Then you have learned the lesson your father sought to teach you," said the chief. "All that he had is now yours." The older brother smiled happily, but the youngest looked sad. "What about the poor people in our village?" he asked. "If we receive an inheritance, but what will they do?" "Perhaps," said the oldest, "we can teach them how to turn thread into gold." The chief smiled. "You've learned your lesson very well." The 7 Ashanti brothers taught their people carefully. The village became famous for its beautiful, multicolored cloth, and the villagers prospered. From that day until this, the 7 Ashanti brothers have worked together, farming the land. They've worked peacefully in honor of their father. Aloha, King of the Knobs, welcome on in. We'll read the prologue here. Weaving cloth African style. The people of Ghana and West Africa are famous for their woven cloth. The patterns vary from tribe to tribe. Kente, which is made of silken threads and a rainbow of colors, is only one type of cloth that is woven in Ghana. In Ghana, men usually use small portable looms that they can carry from village to village. They trade the 4 to 6 inch strips of woven cloth for food and other supplies. Larger pieces of cloth are crafted by women. They use heavy looms capable of turning out squares of fabric around 16 to 20 inches wide. After the cloth has been woven, the strips are sewn together to make clothing, carpets, or blankets. And then there's instructions on how to do it. Krista Cal, welcome on in. Aloha. How are you doing, my friend? Since you're here, let me do some quick interruptions. Krista Cal, I want to introduce you to King of the Knobs. He's one of my mods. He's a wonderful Canadian streamer. He plays lots of indie games. Ami is another one of my mods, and she's a maker and crafter who's in my neck of the woods. Both of you, I want to introduce you to Krista Cal. He's a guy who I met through Arminestra, a wonderful streamer that I know. She's another Canadian. He's a dad. He does really cool content, especially on TikTok, because his daughter loves leaving them funny videos on his Ring doorbell. So Ami wants to know, why is this book? Why are we reading this book? She's just curious. So this is a holiday book reading stream. Let's go back to here. First, we read The Polar Express, and now we've read a book about Kwanzaa, and we're going to be moving on to our third book. We've got 5 books in total that we're reading tonight, so I'm very excited about that. Yeah, it's good. I've got 3 more books to go. Yes, you missed the Polar Express. That's very sad for you. Don't go watch my VOD then. I don't like the Polar Express. I'd actually never read it before I bought it to read it on the stream. And I read it like a couple times before, and I really wish I'd picked a different Christmas book than that one. So that's why I put it first, so that I could like bury it and get past it. You've never read it. Have you seen the movie? Crystal, you went for work. You're done with your work for the year. Congratulations, and you just got home from dinner. What did you have for dinner? I've never seen the movie, and I've never read the book, so I can't compare it to the movie. I'm very hesitant to watch the movie after reading the book. Oh, you took the kids to CC's. CC's always very good. I always enjoy CC's. Yeah, I've never seen it. I'm very hesitant to see it. I'd be very curious to find out what streaming service it's on, and then like watch it. Like I don't even know if I'd want to spend like a couple of bucks to rent it on Amazon. Because again, the book just left a bad taste in my mouth. Like, my biggest problems with the book, and I talked about it after the book, was that, like, I just didn't feel anything was there, and I felt there was faulty logic in the universe they created for it. Read the book and just let me know if the book and the movie are on par. And then that will help me understand if I need to watch the movie. So what did I think of the 7 Spools of Thread? Like I said before I started reading the book, I'm very glad that I picked this book up, because I felt like it does teach people about what is Kwanzaa, what's the purpose behind it, And again, it provides some context that's needed for it. So I'm very glad I picked it up. It was ironic because I did research to find what was a good Kwanzaa book, and I got it delivered, and literally the next day in the mail, my kids get a book of the month from an organization called Little Feminist. It's based in my hometown, and the book we received was about Kwanzaa. I'm like, well, perfect timing. I just bought a book, and now I have a second Kwanzaa book. How do you find said book of which one? Of the Polar Express? I got it on Amazon. You could probably get it at a library. It's a book from 1985, and it's one of the more popular kid stories, right? Like, oh, and this one says Santa seems, and the bottom says Seuss to me. It's my one holiday sweater that I own. All right, so our next book. I'm so excited about this. Y'all have no idea. I kind of have to frame around so you can understand the excitement I have around this book. My parents are divorced, which I think everyone is very aware of, and I don't want this to be a trauma dump about divorce. But before my parents got divorced, we had books, and we'd read the books together, and there was one book in particular that we really liked, and it's such a creative book. And after my parents got divorced, the book kind of bounces between my two parents, and then it just disappears. Like, no one knew what happened to it. Like, we couldn't find it. My mom has gone through her entire house. She sold the house. No one can find it. Same with my dad. He's sold the house. No one can find it. This book just ceased to exist. And we could never remember the name of it. And all we could remember was there's a reindeer named Jeremy, and they say fancy schmancy over and over and over one section of the book. And we couldn't find this book because there's so little information about it. We've Googled it, we researched it, no one could find it. And then last year for Christmas, my sister sends me a picture and says, "Is this the Jeremy book?" She'd found it in a used bookstore, and I immediately went to the internet to try to find this. It is not available on Amazon. It's not available in any print form. I couldn't get it on the Kindle. I went to a website called abebooks.com, Abe, A-B-E, books.com, and I still continue to this day to get mailings from them because that was the only place I could find this book for under $20. But I own it, and I scanned it for you guys so I can read it to you. And it's a book that I love and I cherish. And when I was reading this, and I was reading The Polar Express, and I'm reading them back to back, I just kept telling myself how much better of a book this is than The Polar Express. I don't think this would make a good movie. I don't think this would become the phenomenon that is The Polar Express. But I love this book so much, and I am so excited to share this with you. Even if you guys hate it, you will not crush my spirit. But I just love everything about this book. So I hope you enjoy this as much as I'm going to enjoy reading this book for you. And yes, I scanned this in Santa and Alex. It was Christmas Eve. Alex had been in bed for hours, tucked in with his favorite bear. But he was too excited to sleep. He turned over on his tummy. He flipped back on his back. He wiggled and wiggled and wiggled until his blanket's all messed up. "I just can't fall asleep. I'll never fall asleep. Just think," he said to his bear. "Santa's out there flying through the sky with my presents." Alex sat up. Then he scrambled onto his knees so he could peek out the window. He searched the night sky as far as he could see. "Where are you, Santa? I wish you would come down the chimney now." Alex looked at his bear. "You know what? We're going to get up and wait for Santa." I actually have to turn pages. Feel so old. He picked up his bear and tiptoed to the door of his room. Slowly and carefully, so he would not make a sound, he opened it. The hallway was silent and dark. Even though Alex was sometimes afraid of the dark, he tiptoed bravely down the hall, past his sleeping cat, past his parents' bedroom. "We're the only ones awake in the whole house," whispered Alex as they sneaked into the living room. "Now," he said, "where should we hide?" Alex was stumped. They could hide behind the Christmas tree. But what if Santa spotted them while putting out the presents? He might go right back up the chimney and take Alex's presents with him. "I know," said Alex. He pulled the cushions off the couch, and in the corner across from the fireplace, and in the shadow of a potted plant, he built a fort. "We're safe here," he said, taking his bear and crouching behind the cushions. They waited. It was absolutely quiet. The light of the moon, shining through the window, played tricks with the Christmas tree, turning it from green to a silvery gray. Alex hugged his bear and hummed a little so he wouldn't get scared. He must have hummed himself right to sleep, because he awoke with a start. The windows were rattling as if someone were trying to get in. Then they blew open and banged against the wall as the wind tore throughout the room. A vase of flowers crashed over. A lamp spun like a top. Alex himself was whipped into the air and almost right out of the house, but he held on tight to the wall of his fort. Then, as suddenly as it started, the wind ceased, and the room grew very cold and very still. What was that? Alex looked at the ceiling. It was coming from the roof, he was sure. Was it reindeer? Alex's heart thumped with excitement. He shot a look over the cushions. At any moment, Santa would be here. And they waited. "Come on, Santa," he thought. "Hurry up." But Santa didn't come. "What's taking you so long? I want to see you." No Santa. Alex began to think he hadn't really heard the reindeer at all. He just imagined it. When he got worried, maybe Santa got stuck in the chimney. "I'd better investigate," said Alex. Yep.
Where's my iPad?
I gave it to Sam.
Where did Sam put it?
I don't know what he did with it. Please close the door on your way out.
This fits me perfectly.
Yep. Excellent. Didn't close the door. Where was I? "What's taking you so long? I want to see you." No Santa. Alex began to think he hadn't really heard the reindeer at all. He just imagined it. Then he got worried. Maybe Santa got stuck in the chimney. "I'd better investigate," said Alex, and he poked his head in the fireplace. "Santa," he called. "Are you stuck up there?" No answer. He crawled in further. "Santa?" It was an awfully dark and sooty. Alex could hardly see. He felt around with his hands. Some of the chimney bricks were smooth and even, but some poked out. "I could climb them like a ladder. I could climb the chimney." And he did. Up to one brick, then another, and another. Whoa! Alex suddenly stopped. What if Santa comes down while I'm going up and he lands on my head? Uh-oh, thought Alex. I'd better get out of here. He started down. Oops, one foot slipped, and then the other. "Help! Help!" Head over heels he tumbled. Upside down, right side up. "Help!" Faster and faster he spun. So fast he didn't realize he wasn't falling down the chimney at all. He was falling up it. Whoosh! Alex shot up the chimney and out the top, way up into the sky. He did 3 somersaults, backflip, and landed on a heap of... "Excuse me, I'm not a horse, you know." What? Alex was stunned. He looked to see what he was sitting on. "I'm not a horse," it said again, and it bucked, tumbling Alex off. "Oh," grasped Alex. Before him was a reindeer, stranger than any he'd ever seen. His antlers glowed like Christmas tree lights. They blinked off and on, and changed colors just like the lights on Alex's tree. Alex knew what his grandmother would say if she saw antlers like that. Fancy schmancy, she'd say. Fancy schmancy. Alex was so busy watching the antlers turn orange, the very same color as the popsicle he'd eaten for lunch, that for a second he didn't even notice the other reindeer. He knew them all right because they were famous. "Hi, Dasher," said Alex. "Hi, Dancer. Hi, Prancer and Vixen and Cobbin and Cupid and Donner and Blitzen." Each reindeer bobbed their head and jingled the bells on their harness. I debated if I should cut the pages. Like, it would have been easier if I'd done that. "And what about me?" said the reindeer whose antlers were now the color of a lime lollipop. "You," said Alex shyly. "What?" said the reindeer. "I didn't hear that. Did you hear that, Dasher?" "No," said Dasher, turning to Dancer. "Did you?" "No," said Dancer, turning to Prancer. "Did you?" "No," said Prancer, turning to Vixen, Common, Cupid, Donner, and Blitzen. "Did you?" "No," they all shouted back, and all the reindeer stared at Alex. "I said," said Alex, speaking up as bravely as he could and using his best manners, "I don't think I know you." "That's impossible," said the reindeer. Impossible? Alex didn't know what to say. He knew he'd never heard of a reindeer with green and purple antlers. Still, he didn't want to hurt the reindeer's feelings. "I must have forgotten," said Alex. "Humph," said the reindeer. "I can't imagine how." He drew himself up as tall as he could. His antlers shone as black as licorice. "My name is Jeremy." "Jeremy," said Alex. "But that's not a reindeer name." "Not a reindeer name?" "Excuse me," said Alex, even more confused. It's just that I've got a friend at school named..." "I've got a friend at school named Jeremy. I suppose you think my name should be Twinkle or Swifty. Do you have any friends at school named Twinkle or Swifty?" Jeremy didn't wait for an answer. "I suppose that the only reindeer you know is the one with the red nose. I'm not mentioning his name, but I call him Fat Nose. My boss isn't using him this year. He's using me." The boss? Alex had almost forgotten. He ran over to the sleigh. It was empty except in the back, where he saw an enormous sack. "Where's Santa?" asked Alex. "Guess it's as good as mine," said Jeremy. His antlers lit up a yummy raspberry. "We land on the roof, and the next thing you know, I can't find him anywhere." He's going to deliver my presents, isn't he?" "What else would he be doing here?" said Jeremy. The other reindeer giggled. At that moment, Jeremy's antlers flashed two colors at once. Velvety brown at the bottom, frosty white at the tips. They made Alex think of his favorite dessert. "It's not polite to stare," said Jeremy. "I didn't mean to," said Alex, "but right now, your antlers kind of look like chocolate pudding with whipped cream." "My antlers what?" said Jeremy. Alex watched the antlers blink off, then twinkle pink. "Now they're just like bubblegum," said Alex. "Bubblegum? My antlers! I've never been so insulted." And Jeremy stuck his nose in the air and refused to even look at Alex. "Oh, Jeremy," said Alex, "I like your antlers. I love them. I think they're..." Alex tried to think of the nicest words he could. "I think they're fancy schmancy." "Fancy schmancy?" said Jeremy. He turned to Dasher. "What do you think?" "Fancy schmancy," said Dasher, turning to Dancer. "What do you think?" "Fancy schmancy," said Dancer, turning to Prancer. "What do you think?" "Fancy schmancy," said Prancer, turning to Vixen, Common, Cupid, Donner, and Blitzen. "What do you think?" "Fancy schmancy," they all shouted. "I guess they are," said Jeremy, tossing his head proudly. "I bet wish you had antlers like mine." Alex was about to agree, even though he thought he'd look pretty funny with antlers on his head, when something bopped him. "What was that?" "Up to his old tricks," said Jeremy. "You better duck." "Who?" asked Alex, as another snowball whizzed over his shoulder. Before Jeremy could even answer, Alex heard from behind the chimney, "Ho, ho, ho!" Santa Claus? Cried Alex. Ho, ho, ho! This time the voice was behind Alex, whispering right in his ear. Alex jumped and turned around, and there was Santa, more roly-poly than Alex had ever imagined. He wore his red suit with white fur trim. He had a long white beard and a runny nose and a jolly face. Santa leaned over and said very slowly, "Hello." His breath in the cold air made a ring of vapor, which Santa twirled on his finger. "You want a donut?" he asked. Before Alex could even answer, the ring had evaporated and Santa was chuckling, holding his belly as it shook. Alice could see that Santa liked to have a good time. "Well, you must be Alex." "Yes, I am," said Alex. "And what are you doing on the roof in the middle of the night without your jacket?" Uh-oh. Alex didn't want Santa to get mad at him. "I fell up the chimney," he said. "You fell up the chimney, eh? Did you hear that, Jeremy?" Said Jeremy, turning to Dasher. "Did you hear that?" Said Dasher, turning to Dancer. "Did you hear that?" Said Dancer, turning to Prancer. That's enough, boys," said Santa, chuckling. He picked up Alex and sat down on the chimney with Alex on his knee. "Scratch here," said Santa, pointing to his cheek just above the beard. Alex tickled Santa's cheek. Lickety-split, Santa growled and snapped at Alex's finger, scaring Alex, making him jump, but making him giggle too. "Could you do that again?" said Alex. But this time Santa said, "Raise your hand and spell up backwards." Alex thought. He knew up was spelled U-P, so he raised his hand and said, P-U. "Oh," said Alex, very embarrassed, realizing what Santa had tricked him into saying. Santa started laughing again. His belly shook. Even his knee shook, which made Alex bounce up and down. Alex couldn't help it, and he started laughing too. "Hey, Alex!" "Santa," said Alex, pointing to the sky. "Look over there!" And Santa looked. Made you look, made you buy a penny book," chanted Alex. "I got you that time, didn't I, Santa?" Santa started chuckling. His face got red. "Ho, ho, 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 ho." He couldn't stop. Alex couldn't help staring at Santa's belly, which really did shake like jelly. "You got me all right," said Santa, wiping some tears of laughter from his eyes. "Hey, boss," said Jeremy with his scolding voice, "are we delivering presents or aren't we? This is Christmas Eve, right?" "Hold on to your horns, Jeremy," said Santa, winking at Alex. "We just were having some fun." Jeremy snorted and stamped his hoof. His antlers glowed like two bright yellow bananas. "Can I go with you, Santa? Can I deliver presents too?" asked Alex. "No," said Alex. "Please," said Alex. "Please, I won't be in the way. I really won't. I'll just be a help." "No." Santa shook his head. Alex's lips began to quiver. He didn't mean to cry, but he really wanted to go so much. "No means yes, and yes means no," boomed Santa, whisking Alex into the air and popping him under the sleigh. "No means yes, I can go," cried Alex, amazed. Santa hopped into a sleigh beside him. "But you must make me a promise, Alex." For the first time, Santa spoke very seriously. "I will," said Alex. "You must promise that you will never tell anyone. It must be our secret forever and ever." "I promise, Santa. I'll never tell anyone ever, ever, ever," said Alex. "Shake," said Santa, sticking out his hand to seal the bargain. Alex put his hand and Santa shook it, poked Alex in the ribs and tweaked his ear, chanting, "Shakespeare, pat on the ear." Then Santa started chuckling all over again. Santa started giggling again, too. "Do it again," he said. "No time," said Santa. He tucked a blanket around Alex, then he shook the reins and whistled. In a jingle of bells, the sleigh rose into the sky. Alex's heart skipped as the sleigh sailed higher and higher. High moon, high stars, Alex waved as he sneaked up close to Santa. As they flew through the night, Santa sang a song that sounded like Turkey in the Straw. But it went like this. Oh, I had a little chicken and she wouldn't lay an egg, so I poured hot water up and down her leg, and the little chicken cried and the little chicken begged, and the gosh darn chicken had a hard-boiled egg. Each time Santa finished, Alex giggled and said, "Sing it again, Santa." And Santa said, "Oh, I had a little chicken and she wouldn't lay an egg, so I poured hot water up and down her leg, and the little chicken cried and the little chicken begged, the gosh darn chicken like a hard-boiled egg." By the time the sleigh landed on the first house, Santa was very excited. Alex was very excited. "Stop jumping down this minute, Alex," said Santa. "You might fall out." And then, to Alex's surprise, Santa picked him up and popped him into the sack of presents. Santa slung the sack over his shoulders, and Alex rode down the chimney with the presents. No sooner had Alex crawled out of the sack than Santa dove into it, burrowing himself right up to his belly. Presents began to shoot out into Alex's arms. One even landed on his head and sat there like a hat. Quickly, Alex laid the presents under the tree. "I'm really helping, aren't I, Santa?" said Alex, looking up in time just to see Santa scoot over to the mantel and fill up the stockings. "You sure are," said Santa. He gave Alex 2 of the cookies the children left for him. "I bet you're going to leave me a lot of presents when we go back to my house," said Alex. "Aren't you?" "Let me see your hand," said Santa. He took Alex's hand and studied the palm very seriously. "Oh, he said. "I see a house." He looked even closer. "And see that house? I see a mean witch who doesn't like anybody or anything. She is so mean she doesn't want children playing near her house. So you know what this wicked witch does?" "What?" said Alex. "She puts a sign right here," said Santa, pointing to the center of Alex's hand. "The sign says, 'If you want presents for Christmas, keep off the grass.'" Santa paused. "Now, where did she put the sign? I forget." "Here," said Alex, touching the spot in his hand that Santa had pointed to. "Keep off the grass! Keep off the grass! Keep off the grass!" shouted Santa, pretending to be the witch and tickling Alex. Alex collapsed, giggling and squirming. "Do it again," said Alex. But Santa was slinging the sack of presents over his shoulder. "Hold on to my coat," he said. Alex grabbed Santa's jacket with both hands. "Don't let go," said Santa, placing the finger next to his nose. Santa nodded, and up the chimney he rose, pulling Alex with him. On the roof, Jeremy waited, his antlers red as red-hot cinnamon candy. "Playing Monopoly, boss?" he said, very irritated. "Hold on to your horns, Jeremy, we're off," said Santa, as he and Alex hopped back into the sleigh. "Hold on to your horns," said Dasher, giggling. "Hold on to your horns," said Dancer, giggling. "Hold on to your horns," said Prancer. "That's enough, boys," said Santa. He shook the reins and whistled, and off they went again. Far and wide they traveled. Up and down, chimney after chimney, they delivered presents and ate cookies until finally, Alex couldn't help himself. He yawned. Santa saw and winked. Then he whistled 3 sharp trills. "Why'd you do that?" asked Alex. Santa put a finger to his lips, signaling that Alex should be quiet and see. The sleigh began to circle. With each loop, it dropped lower, coming closer and closer to a cloud, then landing onto it very gently. "It's time to go home," said Santa. "But I don't want to," said Alex. "Remember," said Santa, "you must never tell anyone that you came with me." Alex nodded solemnly. "Shake," said Santa, sticking out his hand, and Alex shook it. Santa poked it in the ribs, tweaked his ear, and said, "Shakespeare, pat on the ear." Alex started giggling. "I'm telling on you, Santa," he said. "Why?" said Santa, quite surprised. "'Cause you put ants in my pants and you made me do the doggy dance." "What?" said Santa, throwing up his hands and pretending to be shocked. "'Cause you put rocks in my socks and gave me chicken pox." "What?" said Santa even louder, as though he couldn't believe this. "'Cause you put beans in my jeans and you sent me to New Orleans," shrieked Alex, feeling so silly and happy that he jumped into Santa's arms. "Ho, ho, 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 ho. chuckled Santa. He hugged Alex tight. Over Santa's shoulder, Alex saw a star floating toward them. The star, brighter than any other star in the sky, glittered as though it had been showered with gold. Closer and closer it came. "This star will take you home," whispered Santa. But Alex clung to Santa, hugging him hard as he could. "Don't be scared," said Santa softly, kissing Alex goodbye. "Goodbye, Santa," said Alex. "Goodbye, Jeremy. Goodbye, Dasher and Dancer and Prancer and Vixen and Comet and Cupid and Blitzen." The reindeer jingled their bells. Jeremy's antlers lit up like peppermint sticks. Alex put his arms around the star and held on tight. As he sailed away into the night, he suddenly remembered Santa hadn't gone down his chimney. He and Santa had visited all the other children's houses, but not his own. "Santa!" Alex yelled. "You forgot my house! You forgot me!" But Santa was far away and couldn't hear him. "You forgot me!" cried Alex as loud as he could. The next thing Alex knew, it was morning, and he was in bed. His presents. Alex threw off the covers and raced into the living room, and they were all there, under the tree. Every gift Alex had wished for. "Hooray!" cried Alex. "Santa did remember!" But where was his bear? Alex looked around. "Bear!" he called. Then he found him, tucked behind the potted plant, sound asleep. Alex grabbed his bear and he hugged him. That's when he saw it. Pinned to his bear was a star. Santa's star. It glittered as though it had been showered with gold. Alex never told anyone what happened to him that Christmas Eve. He kept the secret for the rest of his life. I love that book. I love that book. Such a good book. And I think one of the reasons why I think it does circles literally around Polar Express is they are basically the same story in the level of it is a kid who believes in Santa and has a journey and adventure with Santa and does something with Santa. But this book has like a story and has like a thing, whereas I feel like the Polar Express is like a news article about what happened in the evening, right? Like there's like people, and I'm sure some of the humor may not run for everyone, but it's just like it makes it seem like this kid and Santa had a great time, and it's fun. And what I really like is at the end of this, and which again was the problems I had with Polar Express, and I think a lot of Christmas books struggle with this, Christmas stuff, is the concept of, do you believe in Santa? And Santa exists in this world, and somehow the adults don't believe in Santa despite the fact that presents magically show up under the tree. Like, I won't lie. I'm a parent. I have 2 kids. If my kids on Christmas morning walked into the living room and there were gifts that neither my wife or I knew about, we couldn't look at each other and be like, Santa's not real. We couldn't. Like, there's no way you could do that. And the Polar Express tries to make that argument that that's what happens. And this book doesn't. It doesn't go there. At no point does it make it sell that anyone in this universe doesn't believe. And that is why I don't like the Polar Express. Alright, we've read 2 Christmas books. We've read a Kwanzaa book, but we're going to keep going. We got 2 more books to read today, and I'm very excited by the other 2 books that we have to read today, because we have a Hanukkah book. And we don't just have a Hanukkah book. We have a Hanukkah book that one of my moderators, Geeky Girl, absolutely loves, and she recommended I read this book. And I read this book, and I absolutely love it too. It is such a fun book. Again, I think it really, similar to the 7 Spools of Thread, goes down and explains what Hanukkah is. It gives concepts and lessons. And again, it isn't just relying on the glamour of this is Hanukkah. This book is a Caldecott Honor book, which means it's got that little like silver star on the front. It's a cute book. I hope you guys enjoy this book. Crystal, I never understood how you cannot believe in that whole Christmas universe. Yeah, exactly. If you live in a universe and Santa's just handing out gifts and you're like, not real because, you know, obviously I'm an adult. All right, let's go to Hershel and the Hanukkah Goblins. Again, it is a cute book. It's a lot of fun. This is by Eric Kimmel and illustrated by Trina Schott-Hyman. It was the first night... Ami wants to fill in, by the way, about the Santa conversation. Maybe Santa plants some memories in adults' heads that make them remember buying gifts, even if Santa was the one who bought them. But Santa doesn't buy them, Santa makes them. One. That's an interesting story. Concept. We're going to go back to our chat screen. He said brought. Oh, yes. Oh, sorry. Sorry, this was me being dyslexic. All right. Okay. Let's flesh this out because I feel like this is a conversation worth having. Why would Santa want people to not to believe he exists? Why? No, I agree. I do not think you've been sitting on this for years and have like a detailed blog theory. But let's what would be some of the reasons why Santa would like that is the most plausible story, by the way, of why in the Santa cinematic universe. The Santa Christmas attic universe that adults don't believe, despite the fact that gifts just magically appear. That's the most plausible rationale that Santa does something. Because the novelty of Christmas and presents are more for kids, and for adults it's more about seeing their kids open presents. No, it's the Santa Christmatic universe. Because I think cinematic is funny, but Christmatic, like Christmas attic. The SCU, yeah, the SCU. Yeah. Christmatic, there you go. That's a new word. I love this SCU. It's interesting. It's interesting. I know some people who are very creative writers, and I'm going to, like, let me write that down. Because I think that is something that's worth discussing about in a book percentage. Why do no adults believe in Santa in universes where he exists? Because obviously gifts just magically appear. Does Santa brainwash people into believing they bought them? I think it's an interesting concept. I like where we're going to go with that. Santa or SCU. There you go. Okay, you didn't say brainwash. Okay, what is a better word? Does Santa implant? You said plant some memories. I'm going to put plant some memories / brainwash. Plant some memories / brainwash. Because I like the connotation of the brainwash, but I do want to recognize that you said plant some memories. Anytime, Mommy, you're one of my mods, I fully expect that would plant it. No / brainwash. Alright, I'll let them draw the conclusion of brainwash. There. Just so you know, here, it's clearly not there now. It clearly does not say brainwash anymore. You're welcome, my friend. Mahalo for this conversation, because this was interesting. This was fun. Now let's get back into the book. It was the first night of Hanukkah. Hershel of Osterpol was walking down the road. He was tired and hungry. Nonetheless, his step was light. Soon he would reach the next village, where bright candles, merry songs, and platters piled high with tasty potato latkes awaited him. But when he arrived, the village was silent and dark. Not a single Hanukkah candle could be seen. "Isn't tonight the first night of Hanukkah?" Hershel asked the villagers. "We don't have Hanukkah, Hershel," one of them answered sadly. "No Hanukkah? How can that be?" "It's because the goblins, they haunt the old synagogue at the top of the hill. They hate Hanukkah. Whenever we try to light a menorah, the goblins blow out the candles. They break our dreidels. They throw our potato latkes on the floor. Those wicked goblins make our lives miserable all year long. But on Hanukkah, it's really bad." Hershel knew he must help the village people. "I am not afraid of goblins," he said. "Tell me how to get rid of them." "It's not as easy as you think," the rabbi warned. "You must spend 8 nights in the old synagogue. The Hanukkah candles must be lit each night. On the 8th night, the king of the goblins must light them himself. That is the only way to break their power." "I'm not afraid, Rabbi," Hershel said. "If I can outwit the few goblins, then my name isn't Hershel of Osterpol." For those who aren't Jewish, Hershel of Osterpol is a kind of famous folkloric character in the Jewish faith and story. Yada, yada, yada. Some backlog for those who do not know. The villagers wished Hershel good luck. They had no potato latkes to give him, so they packed him several hard-boiled eggs for him to eat, along with a big jar of pickles. The rabbi gave Hershel a brass menorah and a package of candles, and a box of matches.
Hey, Dad?
Yes? Why do you keep logging out?
I don't.
Uh-huh. Hold on.
I know the story.
Yeah?
Yeah?
Have you read the story before?
Grandma read it to me.
Oh, what did you think of it?
I really like the part where he crushed... I don't want to give spoilers, but when he crushed the egg like it was a rock. To scare the littlest elf.
Okay. Alright. Hold on. No, I don't want you to see the password. You guys will start learning passwords, and before I know it...
You forgot my own password. I knew that password.
There you go.
What the?
Why are you watching on Mommy's, by the way?
Because mine was at low battery. So low, it's off.
There you go. Alright, where was I? Please close the door.
I think you were at the pickles part.
Got it, thank you. Oh, she closed the door. The rabbi gave Hershel a brass menorah, a package of candles, and a box of matches. Then the villagers said goodbye. No one expected to see Hershel ever again. It was long past sundown by the time Hershel climbed to the top of the hill where the old synagogue stood. The crumbly building was gloomy and dark, and rusty hinges squeaked as Hershel opened the door. Hershel shuddered. Well, could he believe that goblins lived here? He put 2 candles in the menorah and set it on the windowsill. He struck a match and lit the shaman's candle. He said the blessings and was about to light the other candle when he heard the voice. "Hey, what are you doing?" Hershel turned around. Here was a goblin no bigger than a horsefly, with a long pointy tail and 2 little bat's wings hovering in the air. "I'm lighting Hanukkah candles," Hershel said. "Tonight is the first night of Hanukkah." "Oh, no, it's not. We don't allow Hanukkah. Not around here." "Is that so?" said Hershel. "Who's going to stop me? A little pipsqueak like you?" "I may be little, but I'm strong," said the goblin. "Really? Can you crush rocks in your hand?" asked Hershel. The goblin laughed. "Crush rocks? You're joking. No one's that strong." "I am. Watch." Hershel took the hard-boiled egg from his pocket and squeezed it until the yolk and the white ran from his fingers. "That's how hard I'm going to squeeze you if you try to stop me from lighting these candles." The little goblin's eyes opened wide, since in the dim light the egg looked exactly like a rock. Yes, we are our favorite part. The little goblin shook with fear. "You leave me alone," he squeaked. "Gladly," said Hershel, "if you let me light my candles in peace." "All right," said the goblin. "One night won't make a difference, but you better not come here tomorrow. Bigger, scarier goblins are coming, much bigger than I, and if they catch you lighting Hanukkah candles, you'll be sorry." "We'll see about that," Hershel said to himself, and he lit the first candle. On the second night, another goblin appeared. This one was big and fat and waddled like a goose. Hershel was finishing his dinner of pickles and hard-boiled eggs. "Have some pickles," he said to the goblin. "Pickles?" "Here, catch." Hershel tossed him a sour pickle. The goblin caught it in his mouth and swallowed it. "Pickles are good." "Do you like them? I have plenty in this jar. Take all that you want." The greedy goblin grabbed as many pickles as his claw could hold, but he tried to pull his fist out of the jar, but he couldn't. "I'm stuck," the pickles shouted. "You put a spell on the jar to hold me fast." "That's right," said Hershel, laughing, "and it's a very powerful spell. You came here tonight to stop me from lighting Hanukkah candles, so now I'm going to light them while you stand with your little hand in that jar and watch. How do you like that?" "No, no," the goblin screamed. "I hate Hanukkah." "Too bad. You have to get used to it," Hershel said his blessings and lit the candles slowly. Then he sang all of his favorite Hanukkah songs. The goblin wailed and carried on so much that Hershel finally decided to let him go. "Shall I tell you how to break the spell?" "Yes, I can't stand anymore." "Let go of the pickles. Your greed is the only spell holding you prisoner." The goblin let go of the pickles. His hand slipped out of the jar easily. How that goblin raged! He stood there with his hand in the pickle jar where Hershel lit Hanukkah candles under his nose. The furious goblin stamped his foot so hard that he shattered into a million pieces. The wind blew away. The third night came. Hershel felt something watching him as he set the candles on the menorah. Instead of lighting them, he began playing with the dreidel. An hour passed. Hershel looked up. Sitting across the table was another goblin. This one had a fiery red face and 2 enormous horns. "It's getting late," the goblin said. "When are you going to light the candle?" "Later. There's plenty of time." Hershel spun the dreidel. "This is more fun." "What are you playing with?" said the goblin. "It looks like a top." "It's a dreidel. Don't you know about dreidels?" "No." "Too bad. Dreidels are a lot of fun. You can also make lots of money if you know how to play." "Really?" The goblin was interested now. All goblins like money, and this one was no exception. "How do you play?" "It's very simple," Hershel said, "but you must have gold. That's the first rule." I have plenty. Is this enough? The goblin poured a pile of gold coins onto the table. That's fine, said Hershel. Listen carefully. This letter is Shin. If it comes up, you give me a handful of gold. This letter is Hey. If it comes up, you give me half your gold. This is Kimmel. If the dreidel falls on this letter, you give me all your gold. Understood? Wait, there's one letter left. What about this one? That's Nun. If the dreidel falls on Nun, I don't give you anything. Ready? Let's play. You go first. The goblin spun the dreidel. The little top whirled around and round. When it fell, the letters on top was Shin. Oh, too bad, said Hershel, taking a big handful of the goblin's gold. Try again. Maybe you'll have better luck. The goblin spun the dreidel once more. This time it fell on Hay. This isn't your night, Hershel said, helping himself to half the goblin's gold. One more time. Your luck is bound to improve. Once again, the goblin spun. This time the dreidel landed on Kimmel. Too bad, Hershel sighed as he took the rest of the goblin's gold. Would you like me to spin? Yes, the goblin grumbled. He was very unhappy about losing all of his money. Hershel spun the dreidel. This time the letter None was on top. Oh my, I don't give you anything. I get to keep all the gold. Say, that was fun. Go get some more gold and we'll play again. What about the Hanukkah candles? We'll light them then. There's plenty of time. Not for me, the goblin said. I'm leaving. I don't like this game. I don't like Hanukkah. I don't like you. Don't go, Hershel pleaded. I know lots of games. Stay a while. We'll have fun. Goodbye. The goblin spread his wings, swooped out the door, and flew into the night. Hershel lit the candles all by himself. On the following nights, other goblins came. One had 6 heads. One had 3 eyes. All were terrible and fierce. They growled and roared and changed themselves into horrible shapes. They tried to stop Hershel from lighting the Hanukkah candles, but Hershel fooled them all. Finally, the seventh night arrived. 8 tiny candles flickered on the windowsill. Hershel sat back to enjoy their light. Where were the goblins? Had they finally given up? Hershel felt very sleepy. His eyes closed. Suddenly he stood up. He heard a terrible sound. A sound that sounded like the cracking of bones. Happy Hanukkah, Hershel of Ostropol. Who is it? Who's there? Don't you know who I am, Hershel? Weren't you expecting the king of the goblins? The voice rose to a hurricane roar. It ripped the shingles from the synagogue roof and shattered the windows. The Hanukkah candles reeled in the savage blast, but they did not go out. You're too early, Hershel shrieked. You're not supposed to come until tomorrow. The great wind died down. Don't worry, Hershel. I'm far away, but I have power to see you and speak to you. Enjoy this Hanukkah evening, my friend. It will be your last. Tomorrow night I will come for you. You fooled my slaves, my other goblins. Let's see if you can fool me. Poor Hershel. What was he to do? The king of the goblins was on his way, and no power on earth could stop him. Unless Hershel had an idea. It was a big chance, but he had to take it. It was the only way to save himself and Hanukkah. It was the last night of Hanukkah. Hershel set the candles. Why do you keep hearing talking this night out? Maybe my kid's in the background? It was the last night of Hanukkah. Hershel set the candles on the menorah. But instead of placing them on the windowsill, he put the menorah and the box of matches on a small table near the door. Then he sat down to wait. Night fell. Did that get rid of it? All right, interesting. Interesting. All right. It looked like, down the corner there's the little upcoming streams, and evidently there is sound associated with that, and there never is sound associated with that. I don't know why there is sound with that, but I muted that particular channel to be safe. I don't see any other audio coming through on my audio mixer. Unless you're talking about, like, my voice. Because I am doing different voices for different characters. Alright, where are we? Oh, it was the last night of Hanukkah. Hershel set the candles on the menorah. But instead of placing it on the windowsill, he put the menorah and the box of candles on the small table near the door. Then he sat down to wait. Night fell. It grew dark as pitch inside the gloomy old synagogue. Outside, the whole world lay cold and silent. Suddenly, a great gust ripped the synagogue door from its hinges. The whole building shook. A fearsome voice spoke, "Hershel of Ostapol!" I hear anything? "It is I, King of the Goblins." Hershel laughed. "Don't be silly. You're the boys from the village. You're trying to scare me." "I am not a boy. I am King of the Goblins." "I'll believe it when I see it. Show yourself to me." "Behold, I stand before you. Do you believe me now?" Hershel tried not to look. Even in the darkness, he could see the outline of a monstrous shape filling the doorway. A figure too horrible to describe. He pretended not to care. "It's too dark. I can't see anything. A candlestick and some matches are by the doorway. Why don't you light a few candles? Then I'll see what you really are." "Indeed you shall." A match flared. The shaman's candle caught the flame. Hershel's blood turned to water at the awful sight before him. But he did not lose courage. "Master of the world," he silently prayed, "thou who created the heavens and the earth and the spirits of the air, stand by me now." Then he addressed the goblin. "It's still too dark. What are you afraid of? There are plenty of candles. Why not light them all?" The hideous hand took the shaman's candle and lit the others one by one. Hershel felt himself growing faint. He forced himself to look. His eyes grew wider and wider as each candle caught the flame. 6, 7, 8. The king of the goblins stood before him. "Now, Hershel, do you know who I am?" "I know you're not Queen Esther." "Very funny. Enjoy the joke. It will be your last." "That's what you think. Begone, or I'll take the stick to you." How dare you speak to the king of the goblins that way?" "I'll speak to you in any way I please. You have no power. Your spell is broken. See, the menorah is lit. You thought those were ordinary candles you were lighting, but they weren't. They were the Hanukkah candles, and you lit them yourself." The king of the goblins roared with fury. The earth trembled, and a mighty wind arose. It ripped the synagogue roof off and blew down the walls. It splintered the great timbers and scattered them like matchsticks. Around the menorah, the whirlwind howled, and the candles never flickered. They burned with a clear, steady flame. The king of the goblins had no power over them. The spirit of Hanukkah had triumphed. The great wind vanished as suddenly as it had risen. Hershel rubbed his eyes. The night was as still as before, even though the synagogue was gone. Walls, floors, roof, even the foundation stones had vanished. But the menorah remained, standing tall upon the little table where Hershel had placed it. Hershel waited until the last candle burned out. Then he started down the road that led to the village. "I'd better hurry," he thought. "I don't want to miss the last night of Hanukkah." But there was no reason to worry. In every window there stood a menorah with 9 gleaming candles to light the way. And the whole village was waiting for him. Afterward, Hershel and the Hanukkah Goblins began as an experiment to see if I could create a Hanukkah story along the lines of Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. I started with a Ukrainian story, Ivanko the Bear's Son. Ivanko fools a goblin who lives in the lake. Why not multiply that goblin 8 times and use a Jewish folk character, Hershel of Ostropol, as the hero? I gave it a try and felt I'd written a good story. Unfortunately, every editor I sent it to turned it down. I eventually gave up submitting it. Then Marianne Karras of Cricket magazine asked if I had a Hanukkah story for her upcoming December issue. I.B. Singer had promised to write one, but wasn't going to be able to finish in time. I found that flattering. How often is a writer asked to fill in for a Nobel Prize winner? The problem was that I didn't have any Hanukkah stories except this one, and this one unusual tale. I told Marianne I'd send it to her. Marianne liked it. The story was published in the December 1985 of Cricket with 2 color illustrations by Trina Schart-Hyman. I was overcome. Though I'd been introduced to Trina on a few occasions, I'd never imagined she would illustrate a story of mine. I was thrilled by my good fortune. John Briggs of Holiday House can tell you the rest. The next part's by John. Talk about thrilled. We adored Trina's art as much as we enjoyed her, so as soon as we read Eric's story, we rushed to sign up the book. Our contract with Aaron was to fill in many what he had proven to be an especially gratifying relationship. As soon as she finished the illustrations, Trina wrote to Eric, I think you are a wonderful writer. One of the reasons I enjoyed working on this book, aside from the fact that it's a great story, is that you really know how to write for the artist. You and Dylan Thomas and Charles Dickens. You know just what to put in, and more important, what to leave out. I can't tell you what a pleasure it is to work on a manuscript that implies great visual stuff, but knows enough to stop at the implication. As a picture book author, you're among the greats. I truly admire and appreciate your skill and professionalism. I just want to say thank you for the pleasure it gave me to work on this story. I think I drew Hershel just right. I may have even fallen in love with him. Eric has never forgotten the letter. This is what she wrote to me when nobody from nowhere, and she was one of the gods. So yeah, I love this book. Again, I think it's a good book. I think it really just, it's everything that I would want from a story for kids. It's got the morals, it's got excitement, it's got different characters, it's not too complex. It doesn't rely upon the thing. I don't know. It was such a good book. I was so glad that Geeky recommended I read that book because again, it is a good book. And it's a book that I'm going to enjoy having and reading and sharing with like my kids and then maybe with my older grandchildren, who knows. But I greatly appreciate it. Alright. We're now going to read the last book that I have. And I keep peeking. I apologize, I keep peeking. The last book is a very special book to me. I think it's a special book to everyone. I'm not like the only one in the universe who thinks this book is special. I read this book to my kids every year on Christmas Eve. It's a tradition. When we have footage of me reading it every year, from when Sam was 4 months old to, we haven't done it this year, but we have 10 years of footage of me reading this book to the kids. No. One of the reasons why we chose this book to be the book we read every year is because of where we live. So we live in the greater Springfield area. Actually, when Sam was born, we were actually living in Springfield, Massachusetts. If you do not know Springfield, Massachusetts, I would say there's 2 things in the history of the world that if the world ended tomorrow and every town got to say, we have 2 things that we did, Springfield would say, we are the birthplace of basketball. And we're the birthplace of Dr. Seuss. And if you are from this area, you see this area in his works all over the place. Yeah, Dr. Seuss is from Springfield, Massachusetts. Like his first book, I saw it on Mulberry Street. There's Mulberry Street in Springfield, And that is a street that, like, he walked to school on. And there's so many little things throughout his books that if you're from Springfield, it becomes this kind of thing, right? So, like, when we see Mount Crumpet in the book that obviously you guys have figured out I'm going to be reading, we think of Mount Tom, because that's Mount Crumpet to us. And the village, Whoville, there's a village on the other side of Mount Tom that everyone's like, that's the town. That's Whoville. And it's just one of those things that's kind of one of the cool things about living here. And so we knew that our kids would always have a special connection to Dr. Seuss being from his hometown, right? We just knew that, right? Like, growing up in Oakland, there were certain things that just were elevated to another level of hierarchy because it was from Oakland. So we knew that this book would be something that was more important than other ones just because of where they were born and raised. I, of course, am talking about How the Grinch Stole Christmas. It is the Christmas book that I know the best. I am not trying to toot my own horn, but I know it better than any other Christmas story that I've ever had read because I've read it every year. And so I'm really excited for you guys to hear this because it is one that I love passionately. I hope my kids love it passionately. It means a lot. So here is, without further ado, How the Grinch Stole Christmas by Dr. Seuss. I will check Discord after the stream, but thank you. For Teddy Owens, I don't know who Teddy Owens is. Every Who down in Whoville liked Christmas a lot. But the Grinch, who lived just north of Whoville, did not. The Grinch hated Christmas, the whole Christmas season. Now, don't ask why. No one knows quite the reason. It could be his head wasn't screwed on just right. It could be, perhaps, that his shoes were too tight. But I think that the most likely reason of all may have been that his heart was 2 sizes too small. But whatever the reason, his heart or his shoes, he stood there on Christmas Eve hating the Whos, staring down from his cave with a sour, grinchy frown at the warm, lighted windows below in their town. For he knew every Who down in Whoville beneath was busy now hanging a mistletoe wreath. And they're hanging their stockings, he snarled with a sneer. Tomorrow's Christmas is practically here. Then he growled with his Grinch fingers nervously drumming. I must find some way to stop Christmas from coming. For tomorrow, he knew, all the Who girls and boys would wake bright and early. They'd rush for their toys. And then, oh, the noise, noise. It's the one thing he hated, the noise. Then the Whos, the young and the old, would sit down to a feast. And they'd feast, and they'd feast, and they'd feast. They would feast on Who pudding and rare Who roast beast, which was something the Grinch couldn't stand in the least. And then they do something that he liked least of all. Every Who down in Whoville, the tall and the small, would stand close together with Christmas bells ringing. They'd stand hand in hand, and the Whos would start singing. And they'd sing, and they'd sing, and they'd sing. And the more the Grinch thought of this Who Christmas sing, the more the Grinch thought, I must stop this whole thing. Why, for 53 years I've put up with it now. I must stop this Christmas from coming, but how? Then he got an idea. An awful idea. The Grinch got a wonderful, awful idea. I know just what to do. The Grinch laughed in his throat, and he made a quick Santa Claus hat and a coat. And he chuckled and clucked. "What a great Grinchy trick! With this coat and this hat, I look just like St. Nick. All I need is a reindeer." The Grinch looked around, but since reindeer are scarce, there was none to be found. Did that stop the old Grinch? "No," the Grinch simply said. "If I can't find a reindeer, I'll make one instead." So he called his dog Max. Then he took some red thread. He tied a big horn on top of his head. Then he loaded some bags and an old empty sacks on a ramshackle sleigh. Then he hitched up old Max. And the Grinch said, "Giddy up!" And the sleigh started down toward the homes where the Who's lay snoozing their town. All their windows were dark. Quiet snow filled the air. All the Who's were all dreaming sweet dreams without care. When he came to the first little house on the square, "This is stop number 1, the old Grinchy claws hissed. Then he climbed to the roof, empty bags in his fist. Then he slid down the chimney, a rather tight pinch. But if Santa could do it, then so could the Grinch. He got stuck only once for a moment or two. Then he stuck his head out of the fireplace flue, where the little Who stockings all hung in a row. "These stockings," he grinned, "are the first things to go." Then he slithered and slunk, with a smile most unpleasant. Around the whole room he took every present. Pop guns and bicycles, roller skates and drums, checkerboards, tricycles, popcorn and plums. And he stuffed them in bags, and then the Grinch very nimbly stuffed the bags one by one up the chimbley. Then he slunk to the icebox, and he took the Who's feast. He took the Who pudding, and he took the roast beast. Then he cleaned out that icebox as quick as a flash. Why, that Grinch even took the last can of Who hash. Then he stuffed all the food up the chimney with glee. "And now," grinned the Grinch, "I'll stuff up the tree." And the Grinch grabbed the tree and he started to shove, when he heard a small sound like the coo of a dove. He turned around fast and he saw a small Who, little Cindy Lou Who was not more than 2. The Grinch had been caught by this tiny Who daughter, who'd got out of bed for a cup of cold water. She stared at the Grinch and said, "Santa Claus, why? Why are you taking our Christmas tree? Why?" But you know, that old Grinch was so smart and so slick. He thought up a lie, and he thought of it quick. "Why, my sweet little tot," the faint Sandy Claus lied, "there's a light on the tree that won't light on one side. So I'm taking it home to my workshop, my dear. I'll fix it up there and I'll bring it back here." And his fib fooled the child. Then he patted her head. He got her a drink and he sent her to bed. And when Cindy Lou Who went to bed with her cup, he went to the chimney and stuffed the tree up. Then the last thing he took was the log for their fire. Then he went up the chimney himself, the old liar. On their walls he left nothing but hooks and some wire. And the one speck of food that he left in the house was a crumb that was even too small for a mouse. Then he did the same thing to the other Who's houses, leaving crumbs much too small for the other Who's mouses. It was 1/4 dawn, all the Who's still abed. All the Who's still a-snooze when he packed up his sled. Packed up with the presents, the ribbons, the wrappings, the tags and the tinsel, the trimmings, the trappings. 3,000 feet up the side of Mount Crumpet, he rode with his load to the tip-top to dump it. "Pooh-pooh to the Who's," he was grinchiously humming. "They're finding out now no Christmas is coming. They're just waking up, I'll know what they'll do. Their mouths will hang open for a minute or two. Then the Who's down in Whoville will all cry, 'Boo-hoo!' That's a noise," grinned the Grinch, "that I must simply hear." So he paused, and the Grinch put his hand to his ear, and he did hear a sound rising over the snow. It started in low, then it started to grow. But this sound wasn't sad. Why, the sound sounded merry. But it couldn't be so. But it was merry. Very. He stared down at Whoville. The Grinch popped his eyes. Then he shook. What he saw was a shocking surprise. Every Who down in Whoville, the tall and the small, was singing without any presents at all. He hadn't stopped Christmas from coming. It came. Somehow or other it came. Just the same. And the Grinch, with his Grinch feet ice cold in the snow, stood puzzling and puzzling. How could it be so? It came without ribbons. It came without tags. It came without packages, boxes, or bags. And he puzzled 3 hours till his puzzler was sore. Then the Grinch thought of something he hadn't thought of before. Maybe Christmas, he thought, doesn't come from a store. Maybe Christmas, perhaps, means a little bit more. And what happened then? Well, who will they say? The Grinch's small heart grew 3 sizes that day. And the minute his heart didn't feel quite so tight, he whizzed with his load through the bright morning light. And he brought back the toys and the food for the feast. And he himself, the Grinch, carved the roast beast. I was pressing the wrong button. I was pressing the button to go to the scene that I was currently in. You know, we worked on it. We figured it out. We got it going. I hope you guys like that. Again, it's one of my favorite books in terms of books that I read frequently. I read it quite frequently. I'm glad you did. It's kind of become a tradition in my Toastmaster clubs that I read it before, because again, it's a book that I want to rehearse for my kids. Let us find someone to raid. It was a good time. I did actually, for a period of time where I read books on stream to get like going, because like I've never liked the idea of having a starting scene screen, so I would read for like the first 10-15 minutes of the stream to let people come on in. And I stopped doing that. And I think one of the reasons I stopped doing that is because the streams, because I post them to YouTube, and because, you know, I'm linking to it on Twitter and I'm linking to it on LinkedIn, I really do feel a pressure to make sure that when someone watches my stream, I get to the game or what I'm doing in the stream as quickly as possible. Not that I don't want there to be a delay, but when I think of like the number of people who watch me live versus watching the VOD on YouTube, I mean, I don't know what my peak is because I barely watch it, but I always look afterwards. But my peak on Twitch, in terms of those people concurrently watching me ever on Twitch, is barely a third of the people who have viewed the VOD on YouTube. And I'm not getting like thousands of people watching the VOD. I'm talking like 6 versus like 20. But I did enjoy this. Yeah. Let's find someone to raid, because I actually did not think this would take all 2 hours. I thought this would go a little quicker than that. And that's okay. I just thought it would be quicker. I thought it'd be done after like an hour and a half. And my voice is actually very sore from all that talking. I don't think I talked any more than I normally did, but I think because I was doing the other voices, it did kind of, you know, a little bit. Let's see who we have to raid. Ooh, look at this. Walmart parking lot is a pretty cool person. She has 1.4. We've rated her in the past. she's an interesting person for you guys to check out. Watch her on TikTok. She's very interesting. We rated her before, and it was a nothing burger in terms of like, oh, hey, thanks for coming in. We're still talking about what we're talking about. Her streams tend to be a lecture, a history thing. Today she's talking about Sister Lives, which is probably why she's at 1.4. She's usually in the 150 to 200 range. But she's a sweetheart. I really do enjoy her stuff. Who else do we have? Ooh. Maybe. And as always, if you know of anyone who's online that you feel like I should meet, feel free to drop the name in the chat. I'll compare who I'm coming up with to who you guys come up with, and we'll come to a conclusion of who we should raid. I know she was streaming earlier. I don't think she's starting soon. She meant to go probably to ending soon. But Zelby's always a wonderful person. Let's check in on her, because she's a potential. That's just me kicking my feet. Ooh, haven't raided House of Jacobs in a while. She's a potential too. Ooh, that girl. I always enjoy her. I don't know if the game is. She's a potential. Alright. I am. You should meet Local. I do know Local. Is he even on right now? Usually towards the top of my list. He is. Giveaway night tonight. Come win some Lego. He's a maybe. If none of these people I pulled aside are people that we won't end up streaming, yeah, I will go to Local. Erin Casey, she's on Be Right Back. She's ineligible, but she's a sweetheart. Zelby, she's live. She's playing Red Dead 2. She's a potential. House of Jacobs. I rated her more recently. That girl. She's playing a game called Team Fight Tactics. She's interesting. She's a maybe. Do you have a preference on me between Zelby, who's doing Red Dead? I know you're probably going to jump over to Local or Dat Girl. She was an Instagram influencer for a period of time, and she kind of walked away from it. Which is interesting in my mind. But again, I've known her for a while. My daughter wanted to raid her once when we were doing Just Dance. And that's how I met her. I'm going to lean towards Zelby. Because Zelby's popped into my chat before. It sounds terrible to say. But I don't think that girl's ever been into my chat. And I don't think there's as much overlap with my audience and her audience. She's a sweetheart, though, and I do recommend anyone check her out. But let's go raid Zelby. Zelby is playing Red Dead 2. She describes herself as Tommy. Nix, welcome on in. How are you doing, my friend? Welcome to the stream. We're actually wrapping things up. It looks like you were playing Assassin's Creed Unity. How is that going? Do I know you? Or just checking in? No, but it looks like you're new. Cool. I'll check you out. Welcome on in. You can call me Craw. I'm a father, Toastmaster, and Lego enthusiast. Today we were reading holiday stories, and we just wrapped up our stream. But apologize that you just popped in towards the end, my friend. But we're going to be checking out my good friend Zelby. Like I said, she's a neurodivergent human, creator, gamer, donut lover. Come join the home for lonely humans. She's an absolute sweetheart. I hope you guys check her out, that you stick around for the raid. I do not have a specific raid message. All I ask is that when we get there, we spread the Aloha spirit. That's what my vibe is about anyway. So, boom. But Tommy, I will definitely check you out, and hopefully you come back some other time. The next time I'll be on live is Friday. We're going to be playing It Takes Two, me and my son Sam. We're going to be playing It Takes Two. It's a good game. We've enjoyed it. We're at the end of the game. I'm taking next Sunday off to... so I apologize. I'll be taking next Sunday off. I think most people will be taking Sunday off. But I'll be back after that. On Wednesday, we'll be doing some Lego building. And back to kind of our normal routine of stuff. Mahalo for being here. Mahalo for being a part of my growth as a leader and communicator. I greatly appreciate every single one of you. And let's go raid our good friend Zelby.
Run away! Run away! Oh god, I run into a tree.
What are you doing in my swamp? What
are you doing in my swamp? Thank you so much for the raid. Amy, hello.